for 230 years. That's a lot of generations. It's estimated that there were 3 to 4 generations every 100 years that lived under this injustice. So now imagine you are an Israelite living in Egypt. You're still a child. And around the table you hear your grandparents talk about how long they have been facing this oppression, this injustice, and nothing has changed. Since their great-grandparents and before them, it's been the same. The culture of the Israelites is filled with storytelling. They are people closely tied to their history. They have heard stories about Abraham and Joseph and about how they were the chosen people of God, highly favored. But now, after so many years, how far away do they feel from that reality? Have you ever felt like the stories of God don't include you? That this God of love, He's a God of someone else's story. After so many years of crying out in the dark, Psalm 88 was given birth. It's actually theorized that this psalm was written during the affliction of the Israelites while they were in Egypt by the sons of Korah. From verse 3, it says, "For my soul is full of trouble, and my life draws near to the grave. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like a man without strength. I am set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me. You have overwhelmed me with all your waves. You have taken from me my closest friends and have made me repulsive to them. I am confined and I cannot escape. My eyes are dim with grief. I call to you, O Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you. Do you show your wonders to the dead? Do those who are dead rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the places of darkness?" When you hear this, when you read this, can you feel that heaviness? Because often in the Psalms of David, the ending kind of gives us a glimpse of hope. But this psalm ends the same way it started. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long, they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken my companions and loved ones from me. The darkness is my closest friend. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I have related with the psalmist and his words. And the Israelites, their experience is vastly different from the oath that God made with them, with Abraham in Genesis 22, verse 15 and 18. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and throughout your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." Even when Joseph died, he reminded the Israelites of the promises of God in Genesis 50:24. "I'm about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you out of this land and into the promised land, into the promise on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph." God called the Israelites his chosen people and promised that they will multiply and flourish, promised that they will inherit a land flowing with milk and honey. But this was not the experience at all. In fact, it was the exact opposite was true. They were slaves for generations after generations. They were multiplying, but it was definitely not in the land flowing with milk and honey. In those times, those dark, dark times, when darkness is our closest friends, what happens to our belief? When we so desperately cry out and the daily suffering doesn't end? What happens when you bring your dreams to God and your dreams feels buried? There's a poet that I like by Langston Hughes. He encompasses this feeling very well. He says, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Maybe one day our hope, just like a raisin, just dries up and makes us a little less optimistic. We begin to lose that childlike hope. You see, my personality is prone to complain. When my unfulfilled dreams stink like rotten meat, maybe like me, you also cross over the hardy, sugary layer that pretends that everything is okay, but it's all superficial words. Maybe like me, your spirit just sags, then one day comes when the last straw on the camel back is too heavy, and we just explode in rage. We explode because we have prayed, and we have had faith that can move mountains. Have you ever felt that your prayers were so desperate that it felt like if they were not answered, you did not want to go on living? You've put it all in and said, God, I trust you for this. Just come through for me. I believe you. I know you will. And then, just that, silence. Have you tasted this despair? I've been there. I've felt so alone that even my wife did not understand what I was going through. I felt like I couldn't tell her. Darkness felt like my closest friend because it felt like no one could understand. I even contemplated suicide. What happens when you don't get your dreams? When the heavens seem silent? You know, our typical answer is, it's God's will. But I would say that we have watered that term down because it feels like we say it with such defeat, not with excitement. And because we are good Christians, this is what Christians are supposed to say, that it is God's will. But our belief deep down inside, we say, I can't open myself like that again to God. To dream that big is so foolish. Then the seeds of doubt start coming in. So now we go through life wearing this mask. The Japanese people believe we wear two masks. The first mask is what we want others to see. The second mask is actually what others see us wearing, our true self. In Christian terms, the first mask is that we have this fragrance that we would like others to smell. The fragrance of Christ, that aroma, that presence about us, that draws others to this deep love and relationship with Christ. But if I have to be honest, most of the time, what they truly smell inside me. That's spiritual cynicism. They smell that I have that syrupy, sweet smell that covers up my pain and that I'm a pretender. They smell that I'm the rotten meat that stinks and complains at the smallest of problems, pointing out the issues of others. They smell that I'm not who I say I am, that I'm not living as the promised child of God. Mm-hmm. Because it's the right thing to do, I say I love God. But in my heart, only at an arm's length. I don't want to be disappointed by Him. I get into a state of being not fully invested in God anymore because I feel hurt that He has let me down. And now I'm not even sure that He loves me. I think this is what happens to the people in the churches, where people filled with this spiritual cynicism and it begins to grow. We transition from believing in God who can perform miracles and the impossible to wondering, is He even real? This is what the world sees us as empty people, weak, claiming promises we don't believe in. They see us as pretenders at best and hypocrites at worst. You know, someone said that our indifference to God is deadlier than our hatred for Him. The problem is that we don't want to admit this because we're good Christians. It's not the mask we want others to see. We just pretend. And the world looks on from the outside, never wanting to come in. Although we come to church and do the right things, even when God does come through for us, we have lost that ability to trust Him completely and experience that love from Him. We have put up so many walls to protect ourselves that we develop this defense mechanism so our hearts won't despair. We don't sing certain songs like the way we used to, with that deep conviction. I would even suggest that the church today smell like it's full of slaves who act like they are orphans, and not like those freely and truly loved by our Father. You see, slaves have been conditioned to have a survival mentality. I'm the slave. I'm the Israelite. This is my heart. You see, when the Israelites were still in Egypt, they saw firsthand the miracles of God. They experienced that awesome power when God turned the river to blood, sending and clearing plagues after plague, frogs, lice, flies, locusts. They even experienced the protection from the angel of death against our firstborn, while the Egyptians suffered. And what do they do when they face trials? I would say we respond like they do. They want to go back to being slaves. It's actually quite funny when you look at it. In Exodus 14, from verse 10 to 12, it says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Did we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would be better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So no, what is it that they wanted to return to in Egypt? In Exodus 5, verse 17 to 21, Pharaoh said, lazy, that's what you are. lazy. This is why he keeps saying, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks. The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, you are not to reduce the number of bricks required of you each day. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. And they said, May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. It's so comical and sad at the same time, because this sounds like us. When God wants to take us forward into a deep relationship with Him, we want to go back to our slave masters when we do not know Him this deep. We want the comfort of ignorance, of a simpler, less deep relationship with God before we lost our job, before we got sick, before we had to call on Him. We are so quick to want to return to our slave masters when hardship comes. You see, people raised on love see things differently than those raised on survival. We see ourselves as those raised on survival and not on the love of God. Slaves hold on to the little that they have, afraid to look for more, afraid to hope for more. We are afraid to look for God. This is our condition, my condition. Now, what if it was true that you and I can be completely healed from this condition? This condition of despair, fear, and spiritual cynicism. What if we can find Him again and know that deep love we knew when we first met Him? Wouldn't that be amazing news, Israelites? Not only us, but to the community that we live in, where people have been let down and have experienced hurt. What if it was true for those who hear about this God and the only thing they have ever known is the injustice of this world, the deep brokenness of it? What if we told them that there is a God whose arms are big enough, whose ways are high enough, who can carry us through every suffering and into a peace we so deeply long for? Wouldn't that be amazing news? Wouldn't that just be just good news? Well, it is true, and it is amazing that this God will chase after me in my condition as I am. As Paul prostrates himself onto the ground and prays in the book of Ephesians, Ephesians 3, verse 16, that out of God's glorious riches, that God may strengthen us with that power through His Spirit in our inner being, so that Christ may dwell in our hearts through faith. And Paul prays that us, being rooted and established in love, that we may have power together with all the Lord's holy people, that is the church, to grasp how high, how wide, and how deep is that love of Christ. And to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that we may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. There is no miracle more powerful that is going to have an everlasting change in our community than when we are filled with Christ's love. And we freely share that love. When we find this new identity in His love of God for us. So what does this look like? What does this love look like? It's something so unique that when we see it, that those who know this God and those who do not know Him, I would say that the experience is going to be the same. You see, when God comes, He freely pours out His grace and mercy on us. And I have to tell you that this love feels so out of place in my life. Because the problem is that I feel I had to work for it. Because as a slave, I'm used to hardship. I'm used to be treated unfairly. My heart won't allow this free love of Christ. Because I feel I have to work hard so He can love me. And this is based on our experience of love from other people. And they are well-meaning. But the love has tainted us with disappointments and hurt. So when God comes to us to love us, we remember those experiences of being hurt. God comes, He loves us, and He loves us so much that His love is so amazing that any other love that I'm accustomed to feels like fake love. That this true love will feel so out of place for me because it's so deep, it's so high, it's so long, and it's so wide. When we don't know or experience this love from Christ, we want to go back like the Israelites did. We want to return back to Egypt, to the fake love. Whether that fake love be my identity in my job, or trying to find this love of Christ in my wife, or whatever this love is that is not Christ that's out there. And this is why that this fake love, this love from my wife, at some point is going to hurt me. It's going to disappoint. It's going to get angry at me. And at some point, I'm going to do the same to her and to those around me, which is opposite of Christ.